Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the So Does It Matter one-on-one podcast. I'm actually going to put on my glasses because that will help me to see you and it'll help me to see Will, our guest, and more importantly, the show notes that I have to go through to make sure that this thing goes well. So Does It Matter is a website that is focused on California politics. And what's fun for me is every once in a while, I get to have a confluence of talking about California politics and spending some time with a good friend. And our guest today is a good friend of mine, Will O'Neill, who is the chairman of the Republican Party of Orange County. Hello, Will.
John, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So before we do anything, and for those of you who watch this every week, you know what comes next. After I thank you profusely for being a part of this ecosphere of So Does It Matter, I would just want to encourage you to look at the bottom if you're watching this on Substack and to like this and restack it. If you're watching it on YouTube, to hit like. If you're these are now going up on Spotify and Apple Podcast and all that, Overcast. So please like, share. That's the way that you can help me the most. So I would appreciate it if you do that. And then we have a tradition on this podcast, which we're going to continue because I love it so much, where I just go to open up Chat GBT and I say, I am doing a podcast and my guest is Will O'Neill, chairman of the Orange County Republican Party. Please create an introduction. And then I haven't seen it. It's here, but I have not read it. We're going to read it together. Unfortunately, this isn't as fun as it used to be because it's got a memory and it's figured out that I'm a conservative and all that. So I'm sure it'll be just fine. But here we go. And I'll use my podcast voice. Today's guest is someone who knows Orange County politics inside and out. Will O'Neill is the chairman of the Republican Party of Orange County, one of the most influential GOP organizations in the nation. He is a former mayor of Newport Beach, where he championed fiscal responsibility, public safety, and government transparency. Under his leadership, Newport Beach paid down pension debt, maintained balanced budgets, and protected taxpayers even during the pandemic. Professionally, Will is an attorney. Personally, he is a husband, father, and lifelong Republican who believes deeply in limited government, individual liberty, and community service. Since becoming party chair, he has focused on winning elections, strengthening GOP grassroots efforts, and supporting candidates who stand on principle. I'm excited to have a conversation with Will today about the intersection of principles, policies, and politics. Please welcome Will O'Neill. I mean, does it get any, if I had asked you for an introduction, would it have been as good as that?
It would have been shorter.
It would have been shorter. Yeah. Everybody, welcome Will O'Neill. I'm very excited to have you. So, Will, before we kind of go into a few topics, why don't you take a moment and talk to people watching about the Orange County Republican Party and kind of what they should know, what you guys do. I should say what we do. I should disclose. In addition to being the host of this podcast and author of this website, I am the elected treasurer of the Republican Party of Orange County. So that just means that when Will raises money, I have to sign the checks to spend it. So go ahead, Will.
And I appreciate you doing that. So the Orange County Republican Party represents over 651,000 people who are registered Republicans in Orange County. Orange County itself is 3.2 million people. It's roughly the same size as the state of Nevada. And actually, John, as you know, I hosted a lunch for the governor of Nevada about 2 weeks ago. And I actually made that joke during my introduction and everyone thought that was funny except for the governor of Nevada. So anyway, I enjoyed that. But look, Orange County is an enormous place. We would be bigger than 22 states if we were our own state. So the Orange County GOP is in a point where we are growing. We have actually grown by about 17,000 new Republicans since the election last year. Democrats have grown by about 3,000. That said, Democrats, there are more of them in Orange County than there are Republicans right now. And so we are, though, growing. And so since we're finally at the point where we have gained back the losses we took through the 2018 election cycle, so we are, it goes Democrats slightly ahead of Republicans, and then there are actually over 400,000 no party preference voters. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. But we have seen great growth on both the registration side and actually even on the winning side, where we have 34 cities here in Orange County. 23 of them have majority Republican city councils. And so people who spend a lot of time thinking very hard about local government as conservatives will certainly appreciate Orange County.
So you, at this particular stage, because you're the new chairman, but you've been involved with the process, everything's kind of a cycle. So right now, I assume that that your focus, well, you'd have two focuses now, but you can kind of confirm this. One would be this is kind of the fundraising and candidate recruitment time for the party. And that's kind of what you were merrily, happily doing before all of a sudden Gavin Newsom dropped the big turd in the punch bowl and decided to put Prop 50 on the ballot. So maybe we should talk about Prop 50 a little bit. Our readers know that it's been written about a lot here. We've talked about it on podcasts, especially we had a podcast a few weeks ago with Sean Steele, the Republican National Committee man for California. I'll put a link to that in the show notes below, but Sean talked a lot about Prop 50, but I think, Will, why don't you take a moment, if you would, and just, assuming that somebody somehow is watching this that has had their head in the sand and doesn't understand what Prop 50 does, maybe give your elevator speech on Prop 50. And then I'd love to have a conversation to find out what does a robust political party in Orange County do to help defeat Prop 50.
Yeah, so Prop 50 is a hyper-partisan approach to redrawing lines to make sure that legislators are choosing who their voters are instead of voters choosing who their legislators are. And look, we have so much technology now. They can draw these lines literally down the middle of streets to find neighborhoods to put into different districts to draw them in a way that makes sure more Democrats are elected than Republicans. And I am not actually making a joke about that. 2 weeks ago, I was being interviewed by The Atlantic, fairly left-wing publication, and I made one condition on them, which was, I will be interviewed by you if you'll meet me in Mission Viejo at 7:30 a.m. in the middle of this one street. And they said yes. And I said, oh, okay, I guess I have to go do the Atlantic interview. But anyway, so I met them in the middle of the street because there's literally two streets, in fact, in Mission Viejo where the even side is in one congressional district and the odd side is on the other. They have gotten very, very good at drawing these lines. And the goal of these lines is to take out of 52 members of Congress, only 9 of them, 17% right now, are represented by Republicans. And they want to drop that down to 4. And so they are doing that by putting as many Republicans into certain congressional districts as possible and then diluting other red areas. So, for example, here in Orange County, we would actually see 6 members of Congress go to 8 members of Congress. And the way they do that is by pushing power outside of Orange County up into areas like Los Angeles. And for example, Huntington Beach and Newport Beach, bright red spots in a blue state, would actually be represented by Robert Garcia, a very far left member of Congress in Long Beach, who main claim to fame, he is one of the people who was an avid endorser and supporter of George Gascon, the progressive prosecutor in Los Angeles County, whose bad criminal policies actually affected Orange County too. So much so that our district attorney ran on a policy of no LA in OC. This actually would force a lot of LA into OC. So this is a major problem.
I should add, by the way, because I live up in North Orange County, so I live in Yorba Linda, which, I mean, if you don't count the HOA of Villa Park, it's the city that actually had the largest
margin. John.
That's right. I'm just teasing because we have friends there. For those people who don't know, Villa Park is a tiny little city that abuts Orange, that is a city, but has the population of a homeowners association. Anyways, my point that I was making is that I don't know that Linda Sanchez has ever stepped foot in Yorba Linda, but when they draw these lines, instead of having young Kim, a Republican, as my member of Congress, in fact, Yorba Linda has been represented by Republicans in Congress at least back to the 1960s. I went back and kind of looked all this up. And now Linda Sanchez's district in East LA would spike down, and it's what you talked about. They're taking parts of Republican Orange County and shoving them into districts that are overwhelmingly Democrat to dilute Republican representation.
Yeah, they're doing this all over the state. I mean, there's an area up in the very top north of California that they're so libertarian. They don't even represent. They don't say we're Californians. They say they are the state of Jefferson. And it is represented by Doug LaMalfa, who, if you've ever met Doug, you would say immediately that guy represents that area. But what they've done with this one, in order to make sure that blue dilutes red, they've actually taken the top of California, a giant area, and then rolled it all the way down the coast into Marin County. And I was talking with Cole Patterson, who is doing a great job on the data analytics on this election cycle, who told me that it actually makes more sense if you are in the northeast portion of that congressional district to drive south into Nevada, go through 6 congressional districts to get to the other side of the congressional district than it would to actually drive through it. So what we're seeing on these maps is it's just gross. And the real problem is not just dropping from 9 to 4, you're actually dropping 4 or 5 competitive districts. So, for example, here in Orange County, we have 3 of only a few dozen competitive districts in the entire country. And these competitive districts make sure that people are actually trying to engage with the other side. If you are a Republican, you're going to need to go talk to a bunch of Democrats. If you're a Democrat, you're going to have to talk to a bunch of Republicans and make sure that you're governing that way too, or you're going to face a really hard reelection. Instead, what they're doing is they're packing in a bunch more blue into these competitive districts to make them as uncompetitive as they possibly can. And so, for example, a guy like Derek Tran, who only won by 630 votes over Michelle Steele, is going to have a whole lot more Democrats in that area. So he is not even going to face reelection with the same voters that put him in. That is a lack of accountability. And also, just point out real quickly, make sure that people who have these blue districts, these hyper blue districts, are not looking across the aisle or even looking toward the center. They're looking over their left shoulder at the AOCs of the world to make sure that they don't get primaried. And that is a real problem, as we are seeing right now in the government shutdown back in DC.
Makes a lot of sense. If you're Gavin Newsom, why you'd want to slice and dice, and also the legislative leaders, not to douse this with any more cynicism, but the way that these lines were drawn, it just so happens that the current state Senate president who was termed out, the current assembly speaker, both have brand new districts they can run for that are safely Democratic and have no incumbents in them. So just go figure. Will, why don't you take a few minutes and talk to us about the effort that you're spearheading as the chairman of the Orange County Party to try to defeat Prop 50 in Orange County?
Yeah, so it's no surprise to anyone, and no secret certainly, that the no on 50 side is being heavily outspent by the yes on 50 side. When you're seeing $12 million from Tom Steyer to launch a campaign where he's the face of it, which, by the way, not awesome. He is as far left billionaire as you can possibly come to find out. I don't think actually Mondami thinks he should exist, according to his words, but they're in the same party. It should be interesting. You also have 10 million from Soros. You've got almost 10 million or more from the teachers associations. You've got a lot of money flying in on this thing. So we do not have $10 million at the OCGOP or a donor willing to give us $10 million to oppose this. So the question for us was, what are we going to do about that? And the answer is we really have leaned in heavily on volunteers and also localizing these races. And we've done a pretty effective job of it so far. So, for example, had volunteers sign over 9,000 postcards to make sure that we had Republicans who had not voted yet turning out. We have been walking precincts now for over a month. There have been some weekends where more than 25% of all doors knocked on the no on 50 side have actually been in Orange County. We have made sure that text messages are going out that are hyper localized to cities. For example, the mayor of Newport Beach sent through the OCGOP member communications, sent a message to every Republican in Newport Beach, telling them to vote no on 50. We have also made sure that our elected officials are taking public stances against 50. So, for example, over about 36 hours or so, we got over 130 elected officials in Orange County to make sure that they oppose Prop 50. We have multiple cities and school boards taking resolutions against Prop 50. We are out there knocking on doors like crazy. To the credit of almost every elected official on the Republican side here in Orange County, they have been vocal about it, writing op-eds, being published in the OC Register, getting out and talking to people. And so we are an early voting trend right now where certainly Democrats are outvoting Republicans, but not by nearly as much as they would like. And part of that has been because we've hyper-localized the message. Because look, we don't have a Barack Obama, an AOC, a Warren, which, by the way, thank God we don't, but we don't have that on our side, on the national side, coming in and trying to, bring people along and remind them to vote. So we've had to hyper-localize that message. And to our credit, so far in Orange County, that has been an effective message. But boy, when you're getting outspent by $50-60 million statewide, it is an uphill battle, and we are facing that. So we're going to sprint through the finish line on this in Orange County. And at the end of the day, I really do expect Orange County voters to reject this cynical, behind-the-scene power grab, where you're right. You've seen the people drawing the lines, making sure that the powerful people in Sacramento have exchanged their votes for congressional districts. It's pretty gross, and we need to be pushing back.
That's for sure. And of course, the subtext to this entire thing is that this is really all about Gavin Newsom's quest to try to sit in the Oval Office in a couple of years. I'm sure that factors into everything as well. All right, well, we're going to pivot now and move away from Prop 50, although with a reminder to anybody watching, you have a responsibility to share the word. Although if you're and we do have Democrats who watch this podcast, your responsibility is to do nothing. Republicans and conservative leaning independents, your job is to spread the word and make sure that we defeat Proposition 50. Well, my entree to you, my meeting you was not really through the party as much as it was your role, and you had been elected, or you actually were running for city council in Newport Beach. And I was struck by our earliest conversations because they weren't really as much about politics as they were about political philosophy and about, kind of your grounding, my grounding. We found a kind of a simpatico relationship based on first principles. So I thought that it might be fun for you to take a few minutes and share with folks here your take on the role of government in our society, where your philosophy comes from, what it means to you, because I think that it would be an incomplete interview with you without having you share that perspective.
Yeah. So the principle really comes back to subsidiarity, driven in large part actually by Bill Buckley. His book Unmaking of a Mayor really influenced me quite a bit on the theory of subsidiarity. And basically the idea is it's an old Catholic principle that you want to make sure that decisions are being made at the lowest level possible. And so for most people, that's going to be deciding about making decisions for themselves and their families. And then occasionally you have a neighbor dispute or you have some other dispute. And so you start having government involved there. It comes back to the Declaration of Independence principle of rights that are endowed by our Creator, unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the question is, okay, so what's the role of government? They lay it right out there. The role of government is to secure those rights. Government does not give us rights. We have those rights. Governments exist to secure them for us. And so as we look at that, I want the most power to be given to the most local possible decisions. And that will start with city councils, school boards, up to county governments, state governments, federal government. And obviously there are things I want the federal government to do, including armies, military. I want federal governments to be heavily involved in our borders. I want them to be heavily involved in foreign policy. But I don't want them to be heavily involved in what roads we are constructing in our cities, or trying to make decisions about who we hire, or at the base level and how much staff we hire. That sort of decision needs to be made at the local levels. And so, but that philosophy requires us to get out and make sure that we are recruiting really, really good people at those local levels. And here in California, the local levels actually have an extraordinary amount of money. And again, in 3.2 million people here in Orange County, we have 34 cities. And so out of those 34 cities, we've got to be able to recruit in people who are making really good decisions about budgets, about police, about fire, about roads, about all sorts of different things, and try to stay focused on the core thing, right? So if you can drive into a city and notice the difference between the roads when you enter that city than the city before it, you're doing pretty well. But that requires a lot of attention and detail in ways that are not all that interesting to normal people. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about that. So having my 8 years on the city council, twice as mayor, once during 2020 and then another again in 2024, really grounded me in that. So now that I've moved into the role as chairman of the Republican Party of Orange County, it has reminded us how important it is to get out and recruit. So to your point, you asked me earlier, like, what are the things that we are doing at the OCGOP? One of them is, Prop 50. Another one is local candidate recruitment. And another one is voter ID initiative. And so we're doing all three of those things all at once. But that local candidate recruitment has been, a real primary focus of mine because conservative principles demand it. I mean, you have got to make sure that you are spending time thinking about and implementing conservative values. And when I ran for chairman, I should say, I told people, look, I am a Republican because I am a conservative. If the Republican Party stopped being conservative, I'd stop being a Republican. And so the conservative values are the things that underlie my political core. And it's something that I spend a lot of time reading about, thinking about, and engaging in with people, because iron absolutely sharpens iron.
That's great. So we may find that of the thousands of people that will ultimately listen and watch this interview, that some of them may be flirting with the idea of running for office themselves. Maybe you're going to inspire somebody to get involved and run for school board or city council. What advice would you have for somebody who has not been involved on the public side of politics? Is there a route that you would recommend, a next step to take? what would you say?
Well, first off, if you have never seen a city council meeting, start there. If you've never gone to a school board meeting, start there. Get involved and kind of find out what the issues are and
You're
see how
trying to
you can
scare
be.
people away, though, Will.
No, no, no. If you want to run for something, you should probably know what it is first.
Right?
But you should also be involved with, you should also try really hard to be involved with that program. For example, you could get involved with a planning commission, a finance committee, all sorts of different things to just find out, hey, where are my talents? Like I ended up on the city's finance committee for the city of Newport Beach. I had no idea that one of my talents was municipal finance. Turns out I was pretty good at it. And I spent 6 years as the chairman of the finance committee for the city of Newport Beach, including during 2020 and 2021, which your chat GPT mentioned in my introduction. So that kudos to them.
And
But
they didn't mention your
the
valiant.
finance committee, yeah, they mentioned fiscal stewardship and conservative
No, what that
principles.
was, I was gonna praise you. They forgot to mention that you took on Gavin Newsom and kept the beaches in Newport open, that you kept
Yeah.
restaurants open, that you kept the city alive and vibrant. As a matter of fact, I think that during COVID, I certainly was one of the people who went into Newport from elsewhere to take advantage of the fact that it was a little bit of an oasis from the over oppression that even Gavin Newsom, sheepishly says in an interview, well, maybe we went a little bit too far, which is the
Yeah.
understatement of the year.
Actually, he did worse than that. So he had closed our beaches. I went on national TV and fought to get them back open, which they did very quickly, actually, because it made absolutely no sense other than his own
Yes, we
political
want you to be
science.
outdoors and distance, but not on the beach.
Right, not on the beach. Because you know that on normal times, normal people want to be within 6 feet of strangers on the beach because that's normal. Anyway, it's just so stupid. The 6 feet rule even was stupid. But anyway, so coming back around though, your original question was, how do we get people to actually run? Well, first off, if you know people you think should run, go talk to them about it. And if they live in Orange County, I would love to talk to them about it because what we're doing, when I ran for chairman, one of the first questions I asked people who had our endorsement and lost, what'd you do with your endorsement? And the answer across the board was, I don't know what to do with the endorsement. Well, we're going to fix that. And so we're going to come alongside people who have never run before and really help ensure that once you get the OCGOP endorsement, we'll make sure you know how to run for office now. And we're doing that actually on the front end. So we have a program called Run Red. And so if you are thinking about running for office in Orange County and are a Republican, we would love to have you take that class. So just go to ocgop.org and sign up for a Run Red class. We would love to have you. On the back end, once you get the endorsement, we're now going to be doing something as well to make sure that you know what to do with the endorsement. And if you are a volunteer and have no interest whatsoever in running for office, that's okay too. We actually just started a program called Lead Red. And Lead Red will teach you how to be a better volunteer and how to use data that we provide to you for door knocking, phone calling, and things like that. So we're going to make sure that we are teaching people how to do just better, especially at the local levels. But we need more conservatives running for office, especially, frankly, at the school board level. And I think a lot of people who are home, like my son started kindergarten on Zoom during 2020. There were a lot of people who all of a sudden started seeing what their kids were being taught and said, wait, what? And so they would very much like to get back to core competencies because that is something California has lacked in dramatically across the state. And you can see it in the test scores. If you want to make a generational difference, a true civil rights difference, get involved at school boards and make sure our kids know how to read and do math.
And I would add, by the way, since unfortunately the lion's share of people watching this aren't in Orange County, that you should call up your county Republican Party. And if they don't know how to do this stuff, they should reach out to Will because Will can send them information so that they can run their own Win Red program, Run Red program. That having been said, Will, we're to the part of this podcast where we move to what I call the lightning round. So in this instance, I hate to say this to a lawyer and recovering politician, the goal is to keep the answers pretty brief. It might be a word, it might be a sentence, at most a minute. And we're just going to kind of run through these pretty quick. And let's start with this one. What was the last book you read?
I just finished the biography, which was pretty thick, by Chernow of Mark Twain. It was interesting. Not quite as entertaining as I thought it would be, but it was interesting.
Well, we have not had a Mark Twain biography as the answer to this question before. So that's pretty good. And what about the last movie you saw? And streaming counts if you watched a movie, not a TV show, but a movie.
Yeah, so my son's 11. He's in 6th grade. So we've been making our progress through the Marvel movies together. And so we actually just watched the most recent one, Thunderbolts, which was also fun. Not amazing, but it was fun.
Well, that's great. We get a lot of that from parents that are on the show or grandparents that their most recent movie was something really focused on spending quality time with the kids. So Who is your favorite American president of all time? And the current president may be your favorite, but he's exempted. We're trying to get a historical perspective. So looking back and
I'm very classic on this one. It's Lincoln, and then followed very closely by George Washington. But every time I go back to DC, and I mean literally every time, it doesn't matter if it's raining, I will make my way over to the Lincoln Memorial and spend time looking at the speeches, his second inaugural and the Gettysburg Address on both walls, spend time reading it and contemplating it and remembering the context for both of those.
he was definitely a leader for his time. Okay, this gets more dicey. Who's your least favorite president in the history of America? The one that you
It's
think
not
jacked
comp-
things up the most?
This isn't complicated. It's Woodrow Wilson, which, by the way, in our book club, and I think you've referenced this before, but we used to have a book club. And if you mentioned Woodrow Wilson, the first thing you'd have to do is start playing the Darth Vader theme and the Imperial March. Woodrow Wilson screwed things up more than anything else. And we didn't have another Woodrow Wilson in the White House until Joe Biden, and that is true on many different levels.
I'm actually just finishing up. I've been working on it forever, but I'm almost ready to publish my own piece on Woodrow Wilson. So you guys will all be able to read about it because everyone should have an authoritarian, government growing racist president, right? I mean, that's what we all aspire to have.
Not accusing Biden of racism, just to be clear on that one. I'm accusing him more of
I was accusing Woodrow Wilson.
He was extraordinarily racist.
You'd have to kind of have cognitive ability to be a racist, and I'm not sure Joe Biden had that. But let's move along to your favorite world leader.
Oh, it's Donald Trump.
Okay, I'm sorry. World leader not our leader, but like from around the world. So I should have
It's
qualified.
interesting. I've got to think on this one. I think my answer might be, at the moment, the person I'm reading more about and really enjoying is the Prime Minister of Italy, Meloni. She's fascinating. And so I've seen lots of different perspectives on her. She seems to be one of those people that people just enjoy talking about. And I'm trying to figure out, do I like her or not? I think right now the answer would be yes. And so she's
She is
probably my
certainly
favorite.
she is certainly representing a much different point of view than most of the world leaders around Europe, who all kind of are taking kind of the socialist liberal tack on most things. Okay, now the least favorite world leader, and I know this is tough because there's some really, really horrible world leaders, but if you had to pick one to elevate to the top of your I really don't like that leader list, who would it be?
Kim Jong-un. It's not close. The way that he is decimating human dignity in his country and has for so long is despicable, horrendous, horrific, all of the worst possible traits of a leader, and is destroying a vibrant a country that could be truly vibrant. And all you have to do is just look at the pictures of North Korea and South Korea at night to see the difference.
Well, there you go. If you could pick someone who is up and coming in California politics to share with us, like someone we should all be keeping an eye on. So I guess now it's probably someone in Orange County politics. Who's somebody, and I'll give you the caveat. If I told Will he could have 30 names, he would give 30. I'm going to make him pick one, but I'm sure he will tell you it's one of 30.
I'm going to go with 3 names. And the reason I'm going to go with 3 names is because we have this up and coming youth leadership right now in the assembly on the Republican side that's really fun to watch. And they're all rising up into leadership ranks, with Heath Flora, who just took over as the minority leader. And so I'll start with Kate Sanchez, who is representing the Orange County Riverside area, and is now the floor leader under Heath Flora. Macedo, who I have not yet met in person, but will actually next week. Really excited to meet her. She's been great. And then David Tongipa, also great. Those latter two are up in the Central Valley, which is where I grew up. So I may have a little bit of a special place in my heart for those folks representing the Central Valley.
Yes. Well, for those who don't know, Will is from Fresno, grew up a Giants fan, which is a fatal flaw for him. I'm not going to ask him who he's rooting for in the World Series because I'm sure his response will be nobody.
Meteor.
Or worse, he'll say even the Canadians are better than the Dodgers. But
I'm not rooting for outside the U.S. either. So there you go.
Last but not least, last of our questions for this interview: if you could wave a magic wand and you could change one policy in the state of California, only one, what would it be?
Yeah, I got asked this actually on State of Gold podcast, which you're now listening to.
Kind of cribbed up. John over there does a great job, and I love this question. So
Yeah. Yeah, I loved it too. And there have been some great answers on there. And the answer I gave there, which actually I wish I could go back and answer it slightly differently. So I'm going to do that one. The answer I did there was I would love to see trailer bills gone away. For this audience, you know what a trailer bill is. If you don't, basically they get around the transparency rules by putting these just garbage policies all of a sudden at the end of a budget. And they call them trailer bills because of it. And they can avoid the 30-day review process, et cetera. It's awful. But what I would actually like to see, and I thought about this, and this is the answer I wish I'd given. I would love to see the state legislature be subject to the same transparency laws that they require city councils. So, for example, I would love to see the Brown Act actually be required so that they didn't have all of these backroom deals and shenanigans going on where all of a sudden a fully baked idea that has the full support of the supermajority comes out of caucus and like, oh, hey, this is what we're doing now. I would love to see, if they're going to say we have to do it at the local level, they should have to do it too. Also, I would love to see the same rules apply for the Public Records Act requests, that, we have to turn over an enormous amount of information and data on our side. They get to exempt themselves and the governor from all of this stuff too. Why? Because they make the laws. So I would love to see those two things implemented and say, okay, you think it's good for local government? You do it too.
Right. Well, Will, we have run out of time. I just recently did a survey of our site guests, and the one thing they cued on was keeping the podcast short enough so that they could spend the time and listen to them. So we're right at the edge. So I wanted to thank you very, very much for participating. I wanted to thank you for everything you're doing at the Republican Party of Orange County. And again, to the people watching this, I would encourage you to like it. I would encourage you to share it, restack it. And if you are a free subscriber, I would always encourage you to become a paid subscriber, because down below is going to be one more thing that you're really going to find of interest. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what it is with the hopes that you want to bust the firewall and go down there. Will is going to share with us the things that he reads online or things he subscribes to as he gets educated about things as he faces every day. So with that, Will, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, John.